Okay, welcome back to Living Eternity Now. As many of us are working people, we don't necessarily have time to read all of the Federalist Papers of the American Founding Fathers, or the Declaration of Independence, or the Statute for Religious Freedom. All of us should read the Constitution of the United States, whether we're very busy or not, in order to know what our heritage is, where we're coming from. Because the Founding Fathers of the United States, they based this nation in principles that are universal principles that are found in all peoples. And what I find very helpful is that the social scientist extraordinaire, Dr. Norberto Keppe, psychoanalyst, independent physicist, he has made a thorough research of what the Founding Fathers were about, all of their writings, and extracted the principal essential ideas of each one so that we can look at it with clarity. Because up until that time, all nations on the earth were in despotism. Despotism is the inclination of our planet, and the Founding Fathers found a way to get out from under despotism. And if nowadays we're losing our liberties, which is quite obvious, that is because we have lost our way. We no longer know what our Founding Fathers were about. So far in this series, we've looked at Thomas Jefferson, we've studied Thomas Paine. Today, let's look at the extraordinary Founding Father, Alexander Hamilton, because he had insights that we really need to know about. So referring to the chart, let's take a look. He was a leading statesman, financier, political theorist. He was one of the two chief authors of the anonymous Federalist Papers, so we know very well what he was about. And let's take a look more specifically what Hamilton has to offer for us. Number one, a conservative constitution always takes away the liberty of the people. They were very concerned about acquiring liberty because, as mentioned, despotism was the norm. This word conservative, it fluctuates. It's not a very specific term. And at this time, it was meant conservative in wanting to stay in corruption. In other epochs, conservative was to conserve values that are good, that are beneficial. To be a liberal at one point was to change things for the better. At another point, to be liberal was to change things for the worse, or even perverse. It depends on the epoch. So these words are not very specific. If you're from the left or the right, what is important is to know what's behind these terms, because these terms are very vague, very superficial. To perceive what's really going on with groups of people is more important than these terms. Let's look at number two. Men who flatter the people end up being dictators. Look at this insight. Men who only praise constantly how great we are, how we're number one in everything, even when it's a lie. In stark contrast to, for example, the late President John Kennedy, who would say to us, okay, even though the gross national product is up, but so is the divorce rate, so is mental illness. There are things that we need to treat in our nation that are not good. We need to hear what is the truth so that we can resolve them. And Hamilton is saying here, people who only praise constantly, they end up being dictators. That is to say, they have an intention, a bad intention behind their mask. A sociopath is a psychopath who acts on society. And normally these people, they have a perfect mask. It's unbelievable because they don't see anything erroneous in their lives. You and I, for example, when we make a mistake, or if we do something that's not in benefit of another person, we can have the consciousness of that and correct ourselves. But people who are sociopaths, they don't have that condition anymore. They see themselves as a type of perfect being, like a god, and other people need to serve the fact that they are God. It's a serious mentally ill condition. And Hamilton is warning us about this. Look at number 3. He's more specific here. Human beings are selfishly egoistic and bad intentioned. This comes from the philosopher of that time, Thomas Hobbes, who said that man is a wolf to other men. You know, this attitude of attacking each other, which has nothing to do with our created essence, but this pathological attitude of being against our essence, something that is against what was the crying call of Illuminism of that time, you know, liberty, equality, and fraternity. But the human being has a pathological side as well. And Hamilton is warning us of that. We need to be careful of this. Men are bad intentioned. We need to see what is behind the mask. Christ himself said that you know a tree by its fruits. So we need to see what's behind the mask of people. And you know what? It's almost always very mentally imbalanced people who want power. They can't serve anybody. They don't know how to work. They don't know how to act in benefit of other people. They want to control other people. And 90% of the time, people who are desperate for power, they're very mentally imbalanced people. And Hamilton is warning us that we need to see behind the mask. Look at number 4, for example, referring back to the chart. It's a constant fight to avoid the predominance of imbalanced individuals. Now, why would he say that? Imbalanced individuals, they want power. And the founding fathers knew that. And you know, all of them were very concerned about bankers. All of them. They all spoke about this. For example, let's see just one quick example of Thomas Jefferson. We've seen already some quotes of Jefferson, James Madison. All of them were worried about this. Look, Jefferson, I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. The most powerful people on our planet, they divide and conquer. They use this old technique that works until today. You know, they put one religion against another religion, one race against another race. They put men against women, women against men, one profession against another profession, a nation against another nation, one political system against another political system. They're always dividing and conquering. But these social economically powerful people, they've pitted themselves against humanity. It's this small group of international bankers and economically powerful people who have pitted themselves against all of humanity. This is our true enemy. And our founding fathers warned us of this constantly. They were very worried about these bankers because they perceived clearly they're very unscrupulous, dishonest, even violent, and mentally imbalanced people, that they need to be controlled. You know, why do banking institutions, why can they do anything that they like? Why are they not submitted to anything that is governmental? Why are they completely dominating countries? Why do we allow them to completely dominate nations? You know what's the situation of our planet Earth? We are in despotism to a small group of mentally ill individuals who dominate everyone through the issuance and use of money and a highly immoral financial system. And the founding fathers of our nation warned us of this. If you would like to know more about this, I highly recommend this book. Let me show it to you here. Of the aforementioned scientist, Dr. Kepi, Norberto Kepi. It's called Liberation of the People, The Pathology of Power. And one of the theses of this book, it shows clearly that if economic power dominates the political sector, then we've lost our liberties. And this is something that has not been treated until today. In large part, we've fallen back into despotism, exactly what our founding fathers fought to free us from. And you know what? The scientist Norberto Kepi, he has very specific solutions to this, which we can take a look at in our next study. We'll bring up John Adams and the solutions that Kepi has for the despotism of the socio-economically powerful. I'm Gilbert Gambucci, and this is Living Eternity Now. See you soon.